Podcast. I am your host, Thaddeus Campbell. Excited today. First of all, I have a lot of guys come on the podcast. So for me, it's fun when I get to have a chance to highlight some of the amazing women that we have in self-storage. I'm very excited today for a few reasons, not just because she happens to be a woman succeeding very at the highest levels in self-storage, but also because of the story and also because of her expertise and her knowledge. So there's a few different things I'm really excited to jump into. Want to thank Jesse Lamb, Vice President in charge of operations for Strat Property Management. Thanks so much for coming and spending some time with us.
Oh, Thaddeus, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I listen to you and love your content. So I am honored to be here.
Well, flattery will get you everywhere, Jesse. So I appreciate the compliments. Nice to know that people in the industry are actually listening and watching the podcast. So first question, if you've ever listened to the podcast, is always the same. Such a unique industry. Self-storage is such a niche, and it's such a thing that, you know, you don't really set out. Very few people go to college like, yeah, I'm going to go work in self-storage. So right. I'm always interested to hear these stories of how people found themselves in this amazing industry that we work in.
Completely by accident.
Like most.
Like most, right? So I actually started in human resources, and I had a very windy career path that got me there. But that was my entree into self-storage. I met Don Clausen, who is the CEO of Strat Property Management, and was looking for a human resources person. And I had that's what my education is in, and I was working as a human resources manager in San Diego, and we connected. I immediately thought, I know absolutely nothing about storage, but I loved Don immediately. I really loved the company. I loved the team. So I got on board, and I don't believe in participating in any work, if you are, that you can't do. And so, and I know that's a little bit unusual, but the first thing that I did to support the team was go and see every property, and the team members, I had the education and training manager put me through our basic training so I could understand the job that I was primarily supporting. So
I think it's interesting you say that. I've heard Don speak before, and he talks about how he was running a brokerage and went and worked in self-storage facilities to really understand the so I'm intrigued by that idea, and how has that become a part of the culture for Strat Property?
Yeah, I think Don and I are kindred spirits in that way. That I think we both believe in something that I really admire about him, and something that made me immediately want to work for him. Like that Step Brothers movie where did we just become best friends?
Oh, that's great.
I started at the facility working in self-storage, and that's how I learned. And I think, it's really important to understand that the people who are doing the work, who are turning the wheels of your business, who are that first line with your customers, who are making the decisions every day that really drive you forward, that they have a deep understanding and support the team behind them, not over them, but he said, behind them, with them a lot in that conversation. And that really resonated with me, because that's something that I believe and value really deeply. And so I think he was surprised, but not surprised when I said, let me go out, let me spend a couple weeks and go out in the field and learn how to do what the people I'm supporting are going to do. Because I want to be able to be there for them. So
one of those moments in a job interview where it becomes very obvious quickly that the job is going to be yours when you connect with somebody on that level. There's so many questions I want to ask coming out of this. There's a few different things, because I'm intrigued by your journey. not every day you hear somebody who's a vice president of operations who came from a human resources background. So we're going to dig into that. Before we get into that, I want to talk about culture a little bit because as a, coming from your human resources background, I'm intrigued to know how important it is when you were in that role and when you were looking to hire people and to support a team that you guys are aligned the way you talked about with you and Don.
Oh, absolutely. I think culture is everything, and I think that something that Don recognizes and has been really supportive of is that culture isn't top down. It's not a poster on the wall. You can't tell someone what your culture is. That's not um, your culture is the way we do things around here, right? So, it lives every day. Every person gets to make some decisions about the way that it shows up. And I think hiring people who have similar values, who light up with the things that you light up with, is a great way to help grow what you want to grow and see your culture thrive. But which I think is the reason that Don and I clicked, and that he hired me and has been so supportive of me in my career. We share similar values, but I have taken that into the hiring of my team, certainly, and training, and I know other members of our leadership team feel similarly and take that really seriously. So
So I'm really excited to go down this road. I wasn't even really thinking about this road, but having you, I'm excited to go down it because this is not something that I haven't heard a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of business owners talk about. But it is something I've seen very few nail, right? Where they do create that culture where people seem to be pulling the ship in the same direction. So I'm interested to ask you, having been someone coming out of that human resources side of it and having hired people and even as a vice president of operations, still involved in day to day running a group, a team. And what are the secrets when you're hiring people or even when you're supporting them as a boss or whatever you might be to making sure that that culture stays in place and that you're able to create it?
oh, I think it's a lot of things.
I got time. I'm happy to listen. I
I
because this stuff is literally the most important. I agree with you, right? This is it. Like if you don't get a team pulling in the same direction, what are you doing? You're not going anywhere, right? So I think I'm down for it. I'm going to listen to everything you got to say, and I got my notes I'm taking over here.
I appreciate that. I do believe that it starts with hiring, and I do that a little different, I think, than I've seen that done. So, I usually wear very casual clothes. I know I dressed up today, but that was
I appreciate. I'm wearing a black T-shirt. You got all dressed up with the brooch. The first thing I noticed is the brooch. I'm like, she's got a be. It looks like a beetle. I might be wrong, but
it. I always feel like they're lucky,
I
and
love it.
it's like I'm talking to Thaddeus Campbell today. I'm going to dress up a little bit, but I'm going
I
to tell
love it.
you, most of the time it's my my brand polo shirt and jeans, and I invite people to meet me at the property that I am hiring for. Um, Even if I'm hiring for our leadership team or an admin, I invite them to meet me at a property. And I don't sit in an office across from people and talk to them. I generally walk around the property with them. And while I'm walking, I pick up trash and straighten things up and see who joins me. While I'm doing that, I talk to them about what they're proud of, and I try to get to know them as a person. I think you can train these skills. You can. I think picking the right, you can't teach someone who to be, but you can teach them what to do. So I think I walk around until I get a good sense of who they are as a person. And then that's generally how I hire. So
And that's so fascinating. I haven't ever heard somebody talk about that, which is makes sense given you said I do the hiring process different. I'm interested to know if there are things in your background or from your story that have kind of led you to this place of more looking at the person than the skills.
yeah, well, I had a little bit of an unusual upbringing. I grew up in foster care and bounced around a little bit and had some time in group homes and things like that. And, um, you know, the kind of unifying thread for me is that I can be happy anywhere. And I, I truly believe that. I think that there are great people everywhere doing all kinds of jobs, and there are brilliant people everywhere all around you. I don't believe in exceptionalism. I think these people that we hold up as being brilliant and above others, like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, or are they smart? Yes, yep, they are very, very smart human beings. But I have met equally smart people mopping the floors at my local library. I've met, I think you can have beautiful, amazing, brilliant mind and be sitting on a curb kicking rocks and keep those things to yourself. What those people I mentioned have are a lot of drive and a lot of know-how and are surrounded by amazing teams of brilliant, hardworking people who make their vision happen. But I believe really strongly that there are people who I've just had so many people take a chance on me, Don among them, and the in ways that didn't make sense. Right, my first manager. I was sleeping in the back of my truck when she aged out of care, and that is how she met me. She came out to the parking lot to say,
Uh,
you can't sleep here."
that's great.
And I said, "Yep, completely fair, completely fair. I'll move, but hey, you look like you have your life together. Do you know anyone who's hiring?"
That's awesome. What a great story.
So
I want to ask you a question real quick because listen, for those of us that didn't come through the foster care system, we tend to hear things about the foster care system that don't lend themselves to a person that grows up with the statement, I can be happy anywhere, right? And so I'm interested to know your experience going through foster care and what led to that place where listen, I'm 51 and I've come to that place later in life, late in my 40s into the early 50s, where I understand that I'm in control of how I feel. But I grew up in what most people would consider a fairly stable home with some pretty exceptional things that happened in my life. And it still took me 45 years to figure this out. Coming from that environment, what do you attribute to having that mindset?
uh, libraries,
Ah,
libraries. I got bounced around a lot, and one of the things that is a constant anywhere you go is that there is a library. So whether it's at school or your community library, most colleges open up their libraries. You can go to their legal libraries for free. Um, there are libraries everywhere, and it's a quiet place you can sit. And I have never met a book that felt like a stranger.
love it.
And that started really, really, really early in my life. One of my very favorite people was my school librarian, and um, I realized that my home life wasn't stable, and I did get bounced around quite a lot, back and forth. I got to be with my grandparents sometimes, which was a blessing when they were well enough to have me, but um, definitely in and out. But I think that there is every there's a library everywhere. There's a book everywhere. There's a quiet place to sit everywhere. And I was really lucky that even in maybe not the best circumstances, I still found people at school, at my library, later in my life in community groups and in gig jobs that I worked. And I just realized that there are brilliant, amazing people everywhere. Um, so even if you aren't blessed to have a nuclear family to support you growing up, you can find them. you can you can hunt and make your own. It's very DIY, but I have a hodgepodge of people around me that have been a wonderful help and support. I know I keep mentioning Don, but he's been foundational in my life as a mentor and a friend, and I consider him one of those people collected.
And now I'm interested because you're speaking my language. I said I had a pretty normal background. My parents got divorced when I was 2, so I had a little trauma in my early life too. A little different than you. I still was with my dad and saw my mom. But interestingly, books were where I found my salvation too from those early childhood times. So now I got to go down the road, and I can distinctly remember being in my elementary school library in second grade, and I wanted to check out The Hobbit. My librarian wasn't as cool as yours. She actually wouldn't let me check it out until my parents called and made her do a test read. I want to know what kind of books you got into, and obviously the mindset part of it, we immediately start thinking self help. But when you first started reading, what was it you gravitated to?
It's so funny that you mentioned the Hobbit because one of my very favorite authors is Tolkien, and was the first series of books that I ever read was LOTR. So I love fantasy books. I still do. Anything with a journey, anything where someone's overcoming struggle. I love those stories,
Love it.
but there is almost nothing I won't read. I have, I have chewed through the self help section of my local library as a child and as an adult. I, will read really anything. I learned how to write from books. I refined my faith reading. I learned how to read other languages. The coding that I've learned, it's so funny and my dear friend Lindsay Parrish, she makes fun of me. She's big in the self storage industry, but she's like, "You're so analog for such a digitally savvy person," because I pull it right. I have a Python coding book.
Nice.
And I just like the feel of the paper. It makes me feel peaceful.
I got books, literally bookcase book. I got books all over. I'm not going to show you because I don't want to go, but I'm looking at 20 different books I've got sitting around me. So we're going to hook up offline for that conversation. But I
Yeah,
got a couple suggestions for you, and I'm going to pick your brain too about some suggestions for me to add to the book list. I love that. It's always cool when you have that shared connection. You brought up tech savvy, and so we kind of got introduced through our mutual connection with James Hatfield from Live Switch, guy I absolutely love, and had him on the podcast before. For those of you who don't know James, go look up the podcast with him. A great dude, especially recently lives in Asheville, North Carolina. I'd be remiss in not mentioning all his incredible work for the Hurricane Helene recovery there. There's a long-winded way of getting to your position as a vice president of operations in 2024. And self-storage is really not considered a industry that is the forefront of technology, but we're starting to really see that technology is playing a massive role in how we operate self-storage facilities. So I'm interested to pick your brain about Strat Property Management and how you guys have been able to implement technology to improve the operations of your facilities.
I love that you mentioned James. He's a fabulous human being and a dear friend of mine. And he um, came to me, earlier in the year and was talking about the QR codes through Live Switch and showed me all of the different things that they were offering. And I said, wow, what an amazing, robust product. I could see a lot of different uses for this. You don't have what I want though. Do you think you want to build it?
I
And
love
he,
it.
yeah, not quite that bold, but we had a lot of conversations around the kiosk module for their concierge
Yep.
uh, portion of Live Switch, and he did build it, which is a kiosk software that you can put on literally any device, and I have at this point. Um, I think we've done a lot of things, and to Don's credit, he has let me tinker a lot, which is how I moved over from HR into operations, I kept putting my hand up and saying like, I could probably do that, or like, oh, I think I might be able to, fix that, or I could probably come up with something. And
Love
eventually,
that.
you're spending more time you're spending more time doing this than you are HR. Let's move you on over, which was fabulous. So yeah, we use a lot of tech. He um, was a big proponent of Noki smart locks from Janus, so the
Yeah.
Bluetooth lock system. We piloted KISS at 5 of our facilities, which is the contactless kiosk. Rob and his team do a fabulous job, and have a great product. But I've done a lot of DIY stuff. So I spec'd out the hardware and put Live Switch on it for a couple of really large kiosks, a little different than anything we had done before, and did a remote rental center. Um, did some IoT devices. So I got audio greeting. That greets people when they walk in the door. I just did a little custom
Love it.
sound routine on an Echo Dot that's triggered by the motion on a Ring camera.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'll get all kinds of stuff. We've done smart light switches, and I got to help build out the call routing for our call center, and train our remote folks. So there are lots of ways that tech touches our industry, and I think maybe we were a little behind the times, but I like to think that 2025 is our year. We're going to come out ahead.
It's been interesting to me, and doing the podcast, I get to talk to a bunch of different people, and how quickly it's becoming apparent that if you're not staying with tech, you're gonna get left behind, because it's coming in rapidly and changing things. And one of the things I was interested in talking to you about, you kind of touched on the journey from going from HR, and I promised we were going to talk about that. You kind of went through it, which is great. How do you go from being an HR person to an operations person? Well, you offer to do operational stuff enough so that it becomes a inevitability. But I wanted to talk about the journey that we're going to and we're seeing. I'm interested to know for you guys how much it's going to happen to this remote access, right? You talked about a kiosk model, not necessarily having someone live on site. Is that something that you guys are embracing? Is it something that you're introducing to a bunch of your properties? What percentage would you say you guys are going to more of like a remote management type of a setup?
Well, so um, I think so. We currently have about a dozen that are fully remote. Um, but I am a big proponent of not using binary thinking. So, and what I mean by that is just, I think we tend to think of we're fully remote and we never touch it, or we're fully manned and we, are, and that's our model. I think there are lots and lots of things in between, and I think you can meet your customers where they're at, by offering a variety of solutions that might capture, maybe one solution captures a segment of the demographic, and another solution captures another segment of the demographic, and another solution captures another segment of the demographic, and you put those things together, and you have a really engaging customer experience. I think, I hear we have to train our customers to engage with us remotely. And I'd like to gently remind people that our customers do not work for us, that we work for them. So I think, customizing a solution that works for your particular property and the demographic in which it's sitting, in the way that your customers are interacting, is really important. And using an array of solutions, I think, is really important. So, for example, maybe it's supplemental staffing at a really high foot traffic property where you have peak times where it doesn't make sense to bring in maybe another part-time person, but maybe you put a smaller version of a kiosk off to the side to be a help to people who don't want to wait in line. We have used it as supplemental staffing. So I have built a few of these kiosks, put them in a crate, set them at the home office, and then they're there for people to pick up. If we have an instance where maybe we have somebody go out on leave very unexpectedly,
Got
or
it.
have somebody out sick, or we need to shift coverage around. So it just gives us kind of one more tool in our toolbox. And then having, staffed properties, maybe some of our properties are 25 plus acres, and yeah, and
Wow.
getting from the back of the property to the front. And, we don't want every single customer visiting the office. Places are really high demand on people's time, right? When they, need to be servicing the property in other ways. So we've learned to have, QR codes out on the property to connect people with our support team so they can kind of get that instant answer to their question, help with a payment, things like that. So it's not just remote or not, or, staffed or not, or one solution or none, or, um, you know, get spicy, throw it all up in the air, see what.
That's fantastic. I'm starting to really understand why you become the vice president of operations. The way your mind works is fascinating. The question I wanted, you know what? I just had a question in my head and I forgot what it was, but it'll come back to me. I'm going to go to something that's top of mind in the industry right now that I wanted to ask you about, which is the way the REITs have been playing the pricing game with new customers. And this we've seen a precipitous drop. My background is in ground up development, and it's been, I won't say catastrophic because there's still ground up developments happening, but it has been extremely challenging to underwrite new developments because we see in markets where there's any type of a REIT presence in a lot of places where they're lowering the entry level rate so much to get people in the door. So I'm interested for you guys who have a substantial amount of stores. I think you're between 80 and 100 facilities that you guys operate now. Am I in the right ballpark? Where certainly substantial presence in the self storage industry. How do you operate in that environment when you're still trying to draw new customers in, but the REITs are offering what, we used to see sometimes right now 50, 70% of what we saw 2, 3, 4 years ago. How do you cope with that as an operations manager?
That's such a great question. And I'm going to be honest with you. We have a wonderful revenue manager who is extremely helpful, absolutely brilliant. His name is Eric Peckman, and he helps keep us right and tight in that area. But I will give you I'm going to pull out my soapbox.
I love it.
um, Everyone wants to talk about what the REITs are doing, and I understand why. They, drive our industry in a lot of ways. They run a very polished business. They have more money than God. Who wouldn't want to talk about what they're doing? um, but we are not the REITs, and we cannot play their game. And the minute we step on their field, we lose, because we just, we're not in the same business, which seems, we're both in storage, but we are really in the business of building connections with our community and our customers. We are in the business of getting them to stay with us and, providing a consistent model of business with integrity that I think people are hungry for. I get a lot of my customers from the REITs after they get their first rate increase. So I think, that isn't I think there is no magic bullet secret sauce. It's hard work. It's hard work to go out into the community and be connected with other business leaders. It is hard work to know your customers, and for them to know you. It is, to maintain those connections, to, represent yourself with integrity. It is hard, especially when you get the pressure of, everybody's got the pressure of their partners, their investors, their owners, the banks, who are, again, when you're doing ground up development, a balance sheet isn't relational. Um,
Uh,
but I think that I can now confidently see or say after seeing this pay dividends in the long run that it is worth it and it pays off in spades and word gets around. The REITs are building, they are also building reputation. And it isn't always a positive one. So I think having, really well maintained facilities that people can count on our business, count on our team members, count on our word. Those things are they are a market differentiator in and of themselves, which is kind of sad. That's sad to say, right? But I think is important and missing in this conversation when we talk about, they can bottom out rates and stay there. They can. That's true. And they're always going to beat us there. So
I love your response to that. I've been talking to a lot of people about this and heard a lot of different ways to address it and never anything the way that you just did. So, and I love something you said, which I believe in my heart and from my own background, way before I ever got into self storage, is it's hard work, right? And at the end of the day, hard work wins, and it's a matter of which hard work are you willing to do. And so I'll take you back to January. I was in New York at the NYSA has an investor, the New York Self Storage Association has an investor forum every January, and the five U-Haul, NSA, Cube, Extra, and Public were all on stage, and they all said that the ECRI model was here to stay. And I was really kind of dumbfounded by how confident they were that, hey, the statistics are showing us that this works and we're going to keep doing it. And for those you don't know, ECRI, existing customer rate increase, which is the way they're kindly saying cut the rates on the front end as much as you can to get people in the door, and then rate increase down the road. And I was kind of blown away that they were just so bold in saying that, because you said something, which is you're creating a reputation no matter what you do. And they've proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that from a revenue standpoint in the short term, that model works really well. The question becomes, is it long-term sustainable, which is why I love so much how you went about answering it, right? Because you're not worried about the short term. You're worried about the long term and how do you treat your customer and how does your customer perceive you, which I think is absolutely brilliant.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I am I know the REITs have been around a long time, and I know that they run a really smart business. And they have got, data scientists up one side and down the other who will tell you, you know, people move out X% and we can absorb that, right?
Yeah.
I think and maybe for a company that large with a bank account that deep, that is a sustainable
Yeah.
model. And the fact that those people leave negative reviews, that they go out into their community and talk to their family and friends about their experience and warn them away from your business, that they won't ever come back if they do move out, and they find themselves in need of storage next time because you burned that relationship. Um, People are a finite resource. There aren't an infinite number of people that need storage and that will use it in a recurring way. Um, they are a finite resource, and I know that we treat them as if there will always be another person on the horizon who doesn't know our game, right? But there isn't.
All right, I'm going to ask you one more question because I remembered the question that I was going to ask earlier. And you just talked about people being a finite resource. And I'm really intrigued by this. It's kind of a two-parter question. You talked about having an in-house call center, and you guys decided to do that in-house, even though there's a few companies that all they do is act as a call center as a third party for self-storage. For people that don't know, you guys decided to do this in-house. I'm interested in this as we go through this shift. And you talked about it. It's not like a binary deal. It doesn't have to just be remote or not remote. But I think it's safe to say that we're probably going to shift over the next decade to where you're seeing less on-site staff per store than maybe you did 5, 10 years ago. How do you balance the what we talked about at the beginning, which is the culture, with this kind of shift that we've seen, and data will say this, especially with millennials and Gen Z, there's evidence that they'd rather not talk to someone in a store, that they'd rather do something through their phone. So how do you balance having the culture of your team, the staff that you have, and kind of shifting away from maybe having staff directly in every store?
That's such a great question. And
keep the flattery coming. Keep it coming. It's okay. I like it.
And can I tell you, and just maybe brag on my team a little bit, that we recently had a team member engagement survey, and my fully remote people in connection scored the highest
Nice.
of connection. So there is a way to support. There is a way to support people working remotely and still achieving those results, being connected to your company and your culture. They have extremely low turnover in our remote customer care team. And we do it all in-house, which I know is again, not, is a little unusual. And I think there are some really great, really smart companies in our industry who have, call center capability, XPS, AppPoint being among them, who also have some really wonderful women working in their leadership teams making it happen. Shout out to Jennifer Downer, who is
just was on a seminar with her, a live event that we did. She's an amazing woman.
So inspiring, and leading XPS right now.
Yep.
We decided to do this in-house because I think there is a value to institutional knowledge. I think that, they know our company, they are partners to our managers at the properties. We took our best customer service people, our best salespeople, and put them in a position where they can win for us. So, and for themselves, we, pay them and bonus them very well. So I think, when you put people in a win-win position like that and then engage them remotely, I think that is a slam dunk every time. So
Jessie Lamb, so excited. We've gone well over 30 minutes. I always have fun taping the podcast. I rarely have ever had this much fun with somebody, and so grateful for you sharing your journey, being open about your journey, which is not always easy to do, and giving such amazing insight into a couple really critical things that we're dealing with. I think the thing that you said that jumps out at me the most through this last 35, 40 minutes was we're not in the same business as the REITs. And I think that's really profound. And the way you explain that and describe what that actually means for you guys and how you operate on that concept, something I haven't heard before. So appreciate the insight and the wisdom that you were able to share. We're going to have to do this sometime again. We're certainly going to connect offline about some books. Can't thank you enough for taking the time to come in and join me on this podcast.
I really appreciate the opportunity, Thaddeus. Just the conversation and also the chance to connect. And so thank you for having me.
Absolutely appreciate it. Jessie Lamb, Vice President of Operations for SPMI, Spratt Property Management. So excited to have had her. You will see her on the podcast again sometime. I can absolutely guarantee that. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks as always to PropRise, outpacing the self-storage industry with supercharged deal sourcing. You can check those guys out at proprise.io and get a sneak peek, a demo of their software, which I literally use daily. Love those guys. Last thing, if you got anywhere near as much out of this as I did, please hit the like button, give a comment for Jessie, support the show by liking our YouTube page, whether it's Apple or Spotify podcast. We appreciate any support and feedback you guys get. We'll be back next week.